So what we have here is a comparison of what's gone in and what came out, and what the problems are for this 2007 Subaru as far as the engine mounts and the transmission mounts. The reason for taking out these are the OEM ones, these are the original manufacturer mounts. Inside a car for about 18 years, and the rubber is in fact quite soft. And the same goes for the rubber here too on the transmission torsion mount there. Now, the node you're seeing on this, these are upside down, these two. The node you're seeing here is to align with the slot in the frame. These are the bottom of the engine mounts. They align into the frame of the vehicle, and that's where you screw your nut onto the frame to hold the mount against the frame. These are upside down. Now these two, you get bolts that go into the engine through there, and you tighten those down. So these are a bit adrift, coming apart. So there you see the top of that there's nothing there, so the engine is across that. The same here. This is for the transmission. Yeah, it's quite easy to sort of squeeze that, and the rubber's gone in them over time. So the engine causes at low RPM to beat the transmission, the engine around, so it flops and vibrates around, and you get an awful kicking from the transmission. What that kicking does is destroy the constant velocity shafts, because those get so much violent vibration of being kicked up and down by the transmission, where they come out of the differential in front of the transmission that's behind the clutch on the bell housing on the engine. Yeah. So where that comes through, you get that sort of a problem. That's also a standard mount, obviously, because it's got the holes here. So they've been replaced with this, which are often called group end or STI mounts. That one there's another original mount, but because I didn't have a group end, I got a Whiteline insert. And there's a plate. They're a bit difficult to find. You often need to buy. It's best to buy this here, new as a kit. There is a left and a right. Now in that there's a left and a right also. There's a left side and a right side here. You can just see that in the sunlight there. That's got an L there. That's the left hand one. It's a left hand plate, and that's got R on that one. See if it holds it still long enough. That's got an R on that one. Oh, the sun's over it. There we go. It's got an R on it. That's the right hand plate. But the two mounts themselves, the rubbers here, they're exactly the same. So they're sometimes called STI mounts or group end mounts. This is an ordinary one, an STI or group end mount. The rubber goes from here all the way around, and it doesn't have that void there. And because I could only get hold of an ordinary one, I went and got a Whiteline insert. This is manual transmission. It's a manual transmission. So the Whiteline insert is pressed into 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 holes. It's in one piece, joined together. When fitting it, you find the one that goes in the most difficult, and then you squeeze that in first, a bit of the way, and then you squeeze the second central one in a piece, and follow it always, and until you've got it 3/4 of the way in, when you can then get these outer ones and push them into the slots and start them too. But you need to use a G-clamp, but I have a better one, better than a G-clamp. It looks a bit like a footprint. It's just a flat L-bar at the top and a flat clamping bar, and you can slide them up and down to fit. But they're great for holding onto it and squeezing it in, and then getting the other one to squeeze the next bit down a bit further and a bit closer until you get it all in. But it stops the torsion. Stops the torsion there on the transmission, the engine, by having very solid rubber on them, so that you can actually drive at low speeds like 10 kilometres an hour without stalling and without having the engine and the transmission thumping and banging around, and causing a very severe jerking motion, which is bad for the gears and the gearbox and everything in there. So now it's actually quite possible to drive it very slowly. I've often felt that their original manufactured mounts were too cheap. Anything so simple like that, and that often, and soft like that, because that's even softer rubber anyway, that's insufficient. It'll only last about 5 years, long enough for the warranty, so you'd replace those after 5 years, and that's the thing to replace it with, because that'll hold your transmission and your engine nice and solid. But I found it's often impossible to get these things in pieces. I happen to, 1,000,000 to 1, find these on Facebook, these two plates. So you want to get them as a whole kit, and if they don't send you the nuts, to actually look up for STI mount and grip end mount nuts, because they're the same size all the way around, but you don't use them. You use the ones you pulled off this, the same as that, but they're the ones for going through the frame. So that's how you save your constant velocity joints, because if they're it's about $600 for a pair of good mounts that do something like 100,000 kilometres or 70,000, 80,000 kilometres, that they'll guarantee it for on warranty. But I'd never put them in with things like that there, mate. Otherwise you lose them. They'll be destroyed within 1,000 kilometres. The ones I've gotten here are going to be replaced, because they were ruined too by the bloke that I got the vehicle from. He didn't understand about mounts. He was driving it around. He said to me that the vehicle was perfectly fine. There's absolutely mechanically nothing wrong with it, so he wants the top level value for such an old car. And I said, you've got to be joking, because that's a problem. He also hadn't put the front brake pads in, but he had a pair of those, so that was actually nice. I managed to get him down a pinch on it, because the rest of the machine's a good rolling cage and everything else was working in it, so I decided to just lose a bit on finally getting something that's reasonable anyway. Well, it's reasonable for a mechanic, because you wouldn't want to sort out the two constant velocity shafts, the CV shafts in there. So I decided on getting these, and that way I can use a cheap one. So the ones I've got were only $200 for the pair. And they're completely brand new, and they're guaranteed for 60,000 kilometres, but that's fine with things like that, because that's nice and solid as a rock. When I was driving it before, you couldn't do that under 20 kilometres an hour in first gear. One tiny difference in how you handle the accelerator pedal, and it'd rock and smack all over the joint. You could hear the engine and the transmission beating backwards and forwards. And that there was all the problem is, because as soon as I got the other set of them that I got into there, that stopped all of that. I can drive it under 10 kilometres an hour in first gear. In the high range, I should have said that that's a Subaru, so it's in the high range gearing, and it doesn't thump around particularly. It's just a matter of being very careful at a low RPM with very little power for the engine to not kick the thing around. And even then, when it does, it's not the half of the beating and the smacking that went on with these ones here. That was terrible. So you can well understand I want to throw away the CV joints, CV shafts, no matter how good they are, that were in there. They do click at full lock, so it's saying they're on their way out from these. So you don't ever want to muck around about the engine mounts. It's possibly the most unusually unheard of idea of what goes wrong with constant velocity shafts. Every constant velocity shaft video I have ever seen has never mentioned the engine mounts and why you would change them, or even change to this type of a system here, where you have a far more rigid transmission mount.